Hello and welcome to BharatShakti.in. I'm Brigadier Chatterjee, editor BharatShakti.in. We are going to be talking about the relationship between Russia and China today. It's a relationship that seems to be getting a warmer, and we will analyze what's the effect that has on India. But let's talk a little bit of history about the relationship between Russia and China. Well, decades back, they really started off with almost a similar ideology. So there was this meeting of ideologies. But later on, they went through a border war. They fought on the same side in Vietnam. And, well, the relationship has been an on and off relationship. It's because of certain external pressures, primarily today, as it appears to me, that they are getting closer. To analyze the whole issue, I have with me Lieutenant General P.R. Kumar. General Kumar has been in the army. He's been the Director General Military Operations, and before that, he was the Director General of Army Aviation Corps. He's a well-known strategist and analyst. Welcome to the show, General.
Thank you, Brigadier Chatterjee, and all viewers. It's always a pleasure to interact with BharatShakti.in. And I'm looking forward to an extremely contemporary and strategic topic of China-Russia Indian triangular relationships, for the simple reason that in this geostrategic emerging multipolar world, with a shift to Asia and to the Indo-Pacific, no longer are relations dyadic, but they are dependent on each other. And I think this topic is extremely important for all of us to keep track of.
All right, General. Let's go ahead with the first issue that I want your comments on. And this issue is, what are the geopolitical pressures really that force, external pressures really I'm talking about, that force the Russians and the Chinese to really come together today and present some sort of a common front, or an attempt to present something like a common front?
Right, Brigadier Chatterjee. I think we are all generally aware of what is happening in the world. It is fairly turbulent, and there are a lot of pressures on each other. And this is where, to put it very succinctly initially, I would say that Russia and China are uneasy partners against a liberal democratic world order, which to some extent is also in trouble. But they are more to do with diplomatic and economic relations, and less to do with military. However, slowly and steadily, because of the relationship which has gone sour of USA with both Russia and China, the security partnership has also started emerging, and it is taking a credible foothold. Apart from that, I would like to say that Moscow perceives that a strategic relationship with China is a strategic necessity. Having seen the relationship with Trump, and now the Putin and Biden relationship, which has not improved at all, except for some sort of a reset, he realizes that he has to have a strong ally in this area. Russia has always tilted towards the West, but the West has always discouraged him, disparaged him, and so he's looking at China as a very, very strong partner who is not moved or cannot be dictated to by the West. There is a strong economic and security cooperation between both of them. Incidentally, after the 1950 relationship and agreement, in 2001, Putin and Jiang Zemin have signed the Treaty of Friendship, and this year is the 20th anniversary of that relationship. I think we must realize that there is a growing convergence and understanding of both the countries, including in their foreign relationships. And they want to support each other in their own strategic backyards. For example, the core strategic concerns as far as Russia is concerned is Crimea and the entire area of Central Asian republics and even South Asia. Similarly, China is concerned about Hong Kong, Taiwan, Xinjiang, Nepal, the Indo-Pacific, and also the COVID-19 pandemic, where the entire world is ganging up against China. And so a tandem at the global level is getting increasingly visible as far as the world is concerned. Another very important point which I would like to highlight here is, as you correctly mentioned, that they have gone through a sinusoidal curve of up and down in their relationship. What is very important is what you must remember: when USA and China had a lot of bonhomie after the Nixon meet of Mao Zedong, there was actually, if you perceive it, Russia was fighting two Cold Wars. One Cold War with the United States globally, and the second right next to it, geographically contiguous, rising dragon China. And in the present relationship of these three countries, Russia is the weakest. And between Russia and China, they share a 4,500 kilometer boundary, which was contested, but which has been resolved. So it is a win-win for both Russia and China to have one flank secure. So you can imagine, with both are antagonistic towards USA and its allies, and both under pressure in the area of Indo-Pacific and also towards the West with NATO and Europe also putting pressure on both these nations, it is but obvious that they will get together. They are now getting together as far as space research is concerned, including the voyages, including on the moon. They have got together in actually carrying out technology transfers and technology upgrades as far as ballistic missile defense is concerned. In fact, they did an exercise together. There are a whole lot of military exercises also which they are doing together. Not only are they doing it in the Indo-Pacific, they are also doing it in the Western seas, in the European seas. And so there is a whole lot of things which they are, defense partnerships which are going together, and joint exercises also they are doing. And so I think there are basically, it is USA and its allies which is putting pressure on the Russia, which is forcing Russia to move towards China. Otherwise, there are, which I think we will discuss a little later, there are certain inherent fault lines also. But currently, geopolitics, strategy, and the focus towards Asia and the Indo-Pacific, as also a joint move against both these countries, are bringing them together.
Right. I think that's quite detailed. In fact, I quite with you mostly in that it's primarily the United States, primarily the NATO who are driving these two together. But tell me, General, there must be some internal pressures also which get them together. There must be some pressures that Russians have, an internal reason or something internal to China that gets them together.
Very true. Things are not totally honky-dory as far as internal cohesion is concerned in both Russia and China. And also economically. You must remember that the sanctions are biting hard as far as Russia is concerned. It is not on one particular channel. The entire economic field, the economic, should I say, area, they are facing sanctions. And that is where they are forced to go to and turn to China. You must remember that in 2020, the bilateral trade has gone over 100 billion. They are also looking at a figure of crossing 200 billion in the next 3 years. Their aim is to have $200 billion worth of economic trade by 2024. And China is also the only country which can stand up to the West. And so it is reliable. And there is a whole lot of commerce and trade which is going on between the two. One thing which I would like to find out, which I would like to highlight, is that right now, thanks to the China-Russia East natural gas pipeline, there is a transfer of 40 million tons of crude and 4 billion cubic meters of LNG, which is flowing from Russia to China. Similarly, Moscow is also working together to put pressure on the global economic system, which is based on the dollar, and want to try and change it. And that is where the global economic system will face pressure. Because the minute the global economic system faces pressure, thanks to the convergence of China and Russia, Russia will benefit economically in a very, very major way. We also have seen that the Kremlin and Moscow have realized that they're continuously trying to thaw the relationship with the West has never worked. And so through China and through the BRI and also through the maritime routes. They hope to benefit vastly as far as trade, commerce, security. And let me tell you, there is a lot of one thing which China has always depended on Russia is high-end technology, missiles, rocketry. They are catching up, the Chinese. But the trade right now is not one-sided. It is not high-end technology from Russia to China. Artificial intelligence, space research, electronics, all these niche technologies, Russia is also gaining from each other. While they are actually competitors as far as global defense exports are concerned, they are getting together, and even they are getting together in a convergence on many issues which both consider is their traditional backyard, strategic backyard. Central Asian Republic, Alaska, NATO, Europe, the pipeline through Europe, which actually is always been the upper hand of Russia. China is progressing, but quietly Russia is acquiescing to it, while at the same time wanting to maintain strategic autonomy. So this is how I think their convergence is growing because of mutual benefit and a win-win situation.
Right, General. If you talked a little while back, you talked about certain fault lines that are there between the Russian and the Chinese relationship. Now, what are these fault lines? What are the differences that they have? And can these differences be exploited by the United States? And but notwithstanding all that, there's some sort of a defense pact also being worked out between Russia and China, has been already worked out, might be upgraded further. So what do you have to say about these issues?
Well, you are extremely right. The entire West and NATO and all the other countries which are against the illiberal ideological formations of the illiberal nations led by Russia and China, which have got a lot of alternatives, they are banking on a lot of fault lines between Russia and China for them to fall apart. For example, their entire practical application of Leninism, Marxism has changed. Second, please remember that for the last 60, 70, 80 years, Russia, especially after World War II, and when it was a bipolar world, it is in their DNA to be either the number one or a joint number one or number two in this global system. And they are not used to being dictated to. And now slowly there has been a role reversal. The role reversal is, while Russia was always the senior partner, whenever there was a friendship with China, it is slowly has reversed. And now Russia has acknowledged that the senior partner, both in terms of comprehensive national power, economic strength, and maybe to some extent even military strength, where they both combine, that China is the bigger partner. Second aspect is Russia, because of its geographical contiguity and conflict of strategic space in their yard, like, for example, Central Asian Republic, Afghanistan, and not to forget Iran, all these countries, he realizes that China is also growing very strong and is treading on their strategic lines. While they are caught on to the low-hanging fruit and they are somehow getting along, Russia, you must remember, will always like to retain its strategic autonomy. For example, when it came to India, while he was very, very passive as far as this standoff was concerned and Russia did not make any dramatic statements, when it came to transfer of the S-400, they went out of their way to assure India that it will be done and it will be done on time. It was more to emphasize, actually speaking, that their relationship with India is on a different level. And secondly, that they have their strategic autonomy and they will not jump the minute China says jump. There are many other areas where there are problems. While you must remember that Russia is also a major arms exporter, China has become a direct and competitor and is trading on the toes of Russia. And there is also an ideological aspect on this, where, let me tell you, as far as the South China Sea and all the shenanigans which is going on there in the last 1.5 years, Russia has not uttered a word in support of China. It has kept quiet. Similarly, if you notice diplomatically, China has not commented on the latest aggressive moves of Russia as far as Ukraine and Crimea are concerned. That while they are not hostile to each other, they are maintaining their space so as to have their individual strategic autonomy. Then another aspect is China is being watched closely by Russia. Even Russia is watching the belligerence, the arrogance, the manner in which it is dictating terms to the world purely because of its economic and its comprehensive national power. Russia knows that it is a junior partner, and so it may like to keep some amount of distance and some amount of space for itself to maneuver. And that is why, if you notice, even the number of allies and number of relationships or alliances which it has formed, for example, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the Eurasian European economy, and many of these treaties, China is not a part of it. Similarly, China has got some groupings in which Russia is not a part of it. So this game of maintaining relationship with each other, but at the same time ensuring that they don't doom with each other, is an important part. And that is why Russia is following a lot of independence relationships with all the nations of the South China Sea, Far East, with Japan, with the Philippines, with Vietnam. And so, keeping all this in mind, while they will be together, the biggest way where they can virtually become strategically deep as the ocean and higher than the Himalayas is when the United States actually starts or precipitates a conflict with each other. That is when they will get together. But given the circumstances, the geopolitical situation of how layers of complexities of alliances are being formed, I will give you something very interesting. I would say right now, more than India, Russia needs India as a balancing partner against China. It is not very visible, but right. I feel it will be Russia which wants us as an independent partner, and that is why it is walking on the fence. And
right, if we can go ahead, we're running a little bit behind schedule. I'll take you to the next issue: the impact of this proximity between Russia and China. There are 10 reasons, but what we are really bothered about, the impact of all this on our relationship, primarily with Russia, maybe with China. It can be a positive impact, it can be a negative impact. Well, what's the analysis of it?
Brigadier Chatterjee, one thing I think we can start with two, you can say, truisms. The first truism is there are no permanent friends or enemies as far as geopolitics and strategy is concerned. There are only permanent interests. And that should give India a lot of hope. That you can, even when they keep getting closer, one thing we must realize that both of them, there are red lines which they will draw, and they would always like to keep that little separation, and that is where India works to its own advantage. Second, we cannot have a zero-sum relationship that if you are a friend of China, you are no longer a friend of us. Similarly with China. So we have to work them bilaterally with our allies and in such a manner that we exploit the relationship with Russia to the maximum. And I feel that that is exactly how we are playing the game. We are still having a very strong relationship with them. It is not as deep as it used to be, but there is still a lot of nostalgia, history, and trade between us and Russia. It is not used to be, it used to be in rubles, but now it is in dollars. But having said that, we are still dependent on Russia to a great extent as far as the defense procurements are concerned. We also have similar views with Russia on China being the hegemon in this entire region. And that is another place where we can get together. A third place we can get together is the Central Asian republics and with Afghanistan, where Afghanistan is an area where Russia is actually neutral. China, to some extent, will align with Pakistan and is worried about the Xinjiang and Muslim fundamentalism and jihadi culture. Russia, while it is with that, they are the ones in which India can take the opportunity of allying with Russia as the balancing force. And we can find that this is how India will have to balance the relationship between Russia and China.
Right, General, and let's go a little faster again. Okay. I'll get on to Quad, and the Quad coalescing together, getting to be more cohesive kind of organization. How much does that influence the Russians or the Chinese?
First, let us be very clear that Russia and China both are absolutely convinced that Quad is more, they view Quad more as through the prism of security. They are worried that it will become an Asian NATO, which is very unlikely. And so obviously they are extremely worried about the strengthening of Quad, how they are getting together faster, how it is taking the shape of actually beyond just a grouping of common people, 4 nations with common interests, which should follow a liberal democratic world order. And they basically want freedom of navigation of the seas and words like that. But on ground, they are finding a whole lot of relationships moving more towards the security sphere. But this is where they are worried how India is going to act. But they must be very clear that India too currently is in a situation where India would like to take advantage of Quad, also more in the diplomatic, in the comprehensive national power, in the sphere of geopolitics, as also in economy and trade. And as far as military and security alliance is concerned, while it will take an umbrella of the Quad, it is also very clear that it does not want to form into any military alliance as far as a Quad is concerned. So this is how we must try to tell Russia that we are partners in Quad. We would like you to also join the Quad. You should have bilateral relationships and multilateral relationships with all the countries of Asia in league with us. And we also have a long history of a very friendly relationship with each other.
Right.
And this Quad, as far as India is concerned, is not a threat to Russia.
Right. One last question, Jal. Putin and Biden have just met. Any fallouts that you see from Putin-Biden meeting on this, Soviet relationship and in turn on us, perhaps? How do you see Putin-Biden relationship? You could have drawn Putin further towards him, perhaps, or not maybe him, but you can analyze that issue for us.
I think the whole world was waiting for this to happen without too much expectations. I think before the visit itself, it was very clear to all the geopolitical and strategic experts that given the geopolitical and security situation, there is not much which is going to change, because after almost 4 months of Biden assuming presidency, he has made it very clear. In fact, during his canvassing, he has even named Putin as a killer. And don't forget the fact that Biden's son has been very badly hammered based on information given by Russia to President Trump about a special economic relationship which actually they tried to bring Biden down as far as the electoral politics is concerned. And so there was a very bad personal chemistry between the two political leaders. Having said that, both are statesmen. They have basically, you can say 2 things have happened. One, they have reset the relationship back to a place where they now say that while we have differences, we will engage with each other, we'll talk with each other. Biden started it by increasing the SALT treaty, the nuclear proliferation treaty, by another 5 years. And so they can go forward on that issue. They are working together on many other issues like the Arctic, where China is trying to muzzle in and into the areas which is traditionally the Russian space. That is where India, USA, and Russia can actually work together. And I feel that Putin has had more to gain. He was more apprehensive because he's facing dissensions back home. They are in a major economic slowdown. There are a whole lot of political upheaval which is happening. There is economic sanctions which is happening. He wanted to ease things out. He wanted to tell his people that he's engaging now both with China, having a better relationship with NATO, with EU, and with Biden. And so he's better focused to actually exploit the situation economically and in terms of becoming a third pole in this world.
Right, General. I think so. You can call it work in progress as far as Biden is concerned. Well, thank you, General. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure our viewers have enjoyed the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Chatterjee. It's always a pleasure interacting with BharatShakti.in. And
thank you,
stay safe, and all of you.
Thank you, viewers. Thanks for joining us. And I would request that you Log in now and then whenever you find time, and you'll find such interesting discussions. Should you want us to discuss a particular subject, do let us know about it, and do like us. Thanks again.